Well, I talked about the positive sides for Cold War Zombies. Now let's talk about the negative sides and the things I dislike about it. And like I always when I do these type of videos, it's all about my opinion. Your opinion may be different, and I respect you for it. After all, we all like and dislike different things. And without further ado, let's actually get to the topic of today's video. And the things I dislike. First thing I really dislike is basically how the prestige system works. In pretty much since Black Ops 3, at the start of Black Ops 3, you actually level up to max level, and once you get to it, you're able to reach prestige. Which is fine and dandy, especially when you have up to 10 prestiges, and definitely carried over in Black Ops 4.
Let's see what's inside.
The real issue is, when it comes to Black Ops 3, is that they only had 3 prestige levels at the time. And you could only reach a level of 100.
Only accomplice I need.
So there was really not much for you to go at launch, and that's pretty much the same thing for the whole content itself. At launch, there was barely any new content that Zombies has. Yes, we have Die Machine, of course, our only round-based map we have. But once people get used to it and basically how different it was, there's really not much to go around. And at the time, people just didn't care. They were just waiting for at least Season 1 to see some more content then drop. And that's another problem. In Season 1, there was barely any other additional new content that we had. We had Jingle Hells, which just basically Die Machine, just restricts you of the mystery box, the main quest, and any other side Easter eggs, so you're basically playing a more beta version of the game, even though the game is in its final release form. Now, speaking of content at launch, we have the Onslaught mode, which is exclusive to PlayStation for a year. Around November, this should be released to all platforms as well. But even though I did play it on, you're essentially basically miss out on it if you're playing a platform that's not a PlayStation. And also at launch, it wasn't really the greatest because there was no way really stuck with it and relying on the weapon on the ground being dropped by Elite. So there really not much to go around. Of course, they did improve it in Season 2 Reload, so at least they fixed that. But when it comes to the launch of it, it was a very lackluster mode. And whatever the changes they did in Season 3 Reload, I hate. The one thing they changed was the fact that the orb charge rate, or the orb power, takes so long to charge up now than what it used to be. On a higher round, usually it would take free power orb charge to charge it up. But now it just takes 1. And it was very annoying. And definitely throw up a lot of people's gameplay off. So the only purpose I basically, and Onslaught I used to know of its fast-paced mode. But it doesn't feel like fast-paced anymore, especially with all the charge rate, and also it won't go for my highest record anymore, especially on KGB, where I have 103 elites cleared. So there's no way that I'm able to reach that spot in no time. So the only purpose I have to basically for to play Onslaught is to collect either the intels, the blueprints on some of the exclusive modes, and getting the gold challenge by just killing up to 8 elites. It was pretty dull, to say the least. And honestly, you shouldn't really barely touch the mode, and for people who already play on Xbox or PC, you don't have to really be worried about missing out on this mode because there's not really much to go around, unless you do like to play zombies on multiplayer maps.
Threat eliminated.
Now the next thing on the list is when it comes to the weapons. And of course this weapon, or the in-game, the weapons has some serious balance issues. Some weapons are completely better than others, and it really shows in terms of the kills and the hit consistency, as well as able to deal all these damage, especially how behaved the zombie is. For example, the Spaz 12 is probably one of the best shotguns in the game, and you probably see me running a lot with it. Mainly, it's just good for all situation, all around. And it really shows. And the other weapons, like the shotgun, also like the Howard 77, or its real life name, the Ishtar 47, was good as well. And honestly, it's really hard to get some love to the other guns, but they did offer a buff to a lot of weapons across the board of its headshot multipliers, where now you do more damage to the head, and of course this pairs well with Deadshot, assuming if you're on a controller that you can just snap aim to the head.
There's a dimensional tear near your position. Get ready.
But that's not the whole point. The whole point is essentially a lot of weapons can even rival the weapons itself. And it's crazy too. So usually the Spaz 12 or the M16 are a much better choice compared to the rest of its peers. And it really shows. I mean, if you're trying to use a sniper rifle to reach higher rounds, well, good luck even if trying to reach that in a certain time, because sniper rifles in this game are completely versatile, similar to what they were in Black Ops 4, where their penetration sucks. And by sucks, I mean you can only go through 2 to 3 zombies per bullet. Where a shotgun, I could just mow them down that quickly, thanks to its close quarters capability. So they should definitely need, the sniper rifles definitely needed the buff, and no, don't give it like the buff they had to do for multiplayer, just buff for zombies, and that is, well, just decrease their penetration, bring them back, because I really missed that shit. Another annoying factor when it comes to the weapon balance itself is also the weapon attachments. One of the most annoying thing about them is every weapon attachment basically feels the same thing. They even function the same thing. Now, I understand if when it comes to optics and foregrips, because they're literally the same thing. I understand that. But when it comes to basically the barrels and stocks, or even the grips themselves, should be a little more different. I understand they were probably limited time during the Cold War, but still, the Curly's done a little bit better. Hell, Modern Warfare 2019 actually did a much better job of mixing up some of the weapons and have some goofy ass attachment that actually gives the weapons more personality to it. In Cold War's case, there really isn't much. However, they only shown that when it comes to the recent weapons, like the Tech 9 for example, where it actually has 3 different mods that actually change up the fire. Of course, you start semi-auto by default, but you can switch to a free round burst or full auto at any given time. But with the other weapons, you kind of don't have that option, and it really kills the flow. So it is very annoying to deal with. So most of this course, I just run the same attachments. Same fuel agent, foregrip, task force barrel, mill stop sight, or even the microflex sight, or other stuff. And even to run the same magazine attachment that gives you the larger magazine capacity and the biggest reload speed. And it really shows. And honestly, they could have done way bit better with the attachments. I mean, hell, even Payday 2 had some different attachments, and at least the barrels and stocks were completely different, so it wasn't really game-breaking or anything like that. And at least it wasn't copy and paste all the time. It felt really good. Now, another thing I forgot to mention for Onslaught is there's a bug with the invincible zombie. You clearly see I got hit right there, but there was no zombie that close. Because I think if you kill him a little bit too fast or too quickly, you can't really kill him in any other way, with the exception of the activation of Frenzy Guard, where if they hit you, they get killed by an instant once they hit you. It is extremely annoying to deal with, and you can't even camp in this game if that's happened. Now we're talking about annoying personal bugs is during Season 5 when it comes to finally applying to your blueprints. I think what happened is if you apply your custom blueprint or just even a regular one too quickly, you will actually have a duplication bug where you duplicate the weapon, so you may end up getting 4 guns if you have mule kick or free without it, and this would actually mess up your rotation of your weapon, as well as you lose the rarity of the guns and even the pack punch effect as well. And this was a serious game-breaking bug, and they seem to don't care at all about it because that only got fixed in Season 6. So roughly 2 months this game-breaking bug was a thing. And I don't know why it took Treyarch this long for it to get fixed, which is just pretty dumb. Another annoying game-breaking bug when it comes to Outbreak is the parachute. Anytime you try to deploy your parachute, your camera will get tilted in a very bad way. You may tilt it sideways, or you may even go upside down and feel like you just broke your spine. And honestly, it really sucks dick because it really messes up your head, especially if you try to exfil by jumping off the cliffs in Alpine, and it's really bad. Another game-breaking annoying bug happened in Outbreak is the mission objective Secure, where you're supposed to defend A and B of the rockets, and this happens if you kill so many zombies in one scenario. And that is, you can actually, I think it's happening by with an explosion or just get rapid kills. Your game audio will be cut and will be muted until you close the app and start the game again. And if you're doing it on a high round, let's say about round 15, it really would kill the experience. Because there's happened to me so many times, and this is most likely happening around season 2 or 3. And it's still not been fixed. People even address this issue on Reddit, and nothing, and Treyarch doesn't seem to acknowledge it at all. Kind of funny how it took them a while for them to acknowledge the blueprint bug, but this bug is another game-breaking one because hearing is very important. Now, I did like the fact what they did in Mauer der Toten by giving you a subtitle for the train, and it really helped for people who are deaf. But this should not be the case here, because this is an actual game-breaking bug and not a main feature. Another thing I don't like about zombies in this incarnation is you can get unlimited self-revives. It is so annoying. And the reason it's so annoying is that you can't really get a game over as a solo player. You can just keep going on and on and on until you actually eventually forget about it. And of course they did at launch, it used to cost $250 every time. So it was actually very cheap to make, especially with the high grade salvage and if you barely go down. They did change it though, which is thank God, where they increased it about every either 50 or 100 high grade salvage each. So it was a lot better. But it was still annoying nonetheless because you can still get a lot more. And hell, I got a lot of salvage to make up for it. Speaking of salvage, anytime you go down and go to a bleed out and you die to it, and when you spawn back in, you actually lose all your salvage. And honestly, it really kills it because it really encouraged people to just kind of quit the game because they lose all that salvage that they could have used it to upgrade their weapons or get some nice armor. And they're really out of luck. Also, not only that, they also get their points reset. So how much points you made over it will be completely get reduced. So it's not like the classic where if you have the where in later games they actually give you enough points if you're low on money. That way you can get yourself weapons, pack punch, and perks to give you a fighting chance once you spawn back in. Not the case in Cold War, and kind of funny too because Cold War was marked as a more casual game fit for casual players, but the Blade Out states not really doesn't feel casual friendly. Another thing I don't like is that we have way too many limited time modes for zombies. We had Krang and then we have a lot of stuff for Onslaught. There were some fun modes like the Mystery Munitions, Containment was there, which I'm playing right now, and also a few limited time mode for Outbreak. The Survival and now the Heaves Outbreak, but also the well, now we have the Jack-o'-lantern, which is limited time, which I understand it's going to be a limited time thing. Makes sense. But it's just the fact that we have way too many damn limited time modes. Especially if they put all their best money into making these updates and all these models, these assets, only to be taken out later and never appeared in the daylight again. It really defeats the purpose. I know it's trying to encourage people to play their game at the time, but not everyone can be able to play it. And not everyone's available for free for every moment, 24/7. And it comes to another thing when it comes to limited time stuff is, well, they brought back in, but they don't even put it back in public match playlists. Now they put it in solo or private matches instead. It's nice they brought back Outbreak Survival, but it's really damn that it's not available for pubs again, because I actually kind of enjoyed that experience. Now, another thing I hate is when it comes to basically the characters themselves. Like, the operator, they don't have anything. They're not like we had from the classic, like the 4 crew, that have like actual different personality and actual funny quotes they have carried over. I mean, sure, some of the operators in Cold War did have some funny ones, and however, some of them are just kind of generic, boring ones, because they usually just fill up with one sentence and then stop talking for a bit. Hell, they don't even talk in cutscenes, which defeats the purpose. And this is also another thing that suffered when it comes to other character developments. Only 3 characters basically were more well developed than any other in this game. And those 3 people are Dr. Peck, Klaus, and the Cerberus AI. Every other character, I feel, don't really have much going on. I mean, sure, there's Dr. Elizabeth or Dr. Gray with the whole concern about the player, and then very appreciated that we help her doing some of her work and all that, like an Outbreak. But it just felt the same thing. Same thing with Strauss, Carver, and even Weaver. However, none of them weren't completely that bad. But to me, I feel like the character that got butchered the most is definitely Maxis. And the reason I say that is she's one of the most important characters in the zombie series, and she basically has little screen time. Without counting the trailers, without going searching for the intels, she only let's just say, she only has, basically, she's only appeared on screen for 4 freaking minutes. Or not even that much, or 4 minutes or less. And that does include the cutscenes of rescuing her in the OPC in Firebase C, get her out of the Dark Ether, and then we have the second time we see her is by using her new powers, as we're able to escape in Berlin. And this might be a spoiler for the ending, so I'm gonna do a little bit of a spoiler right now. She had a lot going against him when the Forsaken appears. And not only that, even though she looked like much of an adult size, or pretty much like an age of an adult, or looks like one, she still behaves like a child, which I guess I do kind of like a little bit like that. But it's just that her fight with the Forsaken is hilariously bad. It's like she's trying to one-up with the Forsaken and trying to be all tough and badass, only for the Forsaken just to ignore her insults. And the Forsaken doesn't give a damn because he's talk about bad blah 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 of taking over thousands or thousand armies, conquering 40 realms. And I'm not gonna let a German insect get the best of me. Or better yet, just ignore her like a little mosquito. And that's how the boss pretty much feels like to me.
Probably regret that.
Hilariously bad, and I just think the Shadow Man boss fight in Black Ops 3 was at least was actually more appealing than the Forsaken one. And one thing I need to mention too is Maxis does sound like a broken record when she says, "This is the only way." Like, she's been saying, like, seriously, just do a drinking game. Every time she says that word, wherever you hear it, with her saying when she sings Lost, or cutscenes, or even Intel, do a drinking game about that and see how far you can get drunk by it. Because that's the only way you can get drunk. Now, as for the other stuff, now in terms of the weapon system, well, mostly the support weapon, basically the score streak on multiplayer, I actually like how they were added. However, I don't like the fact that the chopper gunner and even the cruise missile basically are more of a lifesaver to get you out of in a pinch. And of course, they should. Just that you need to get far away from them and actually require you to use a monkey bomb. Or something else to distract the zombies for a bit. And I also think the chopper gun should not damage the player though. After all, I think it will be a little bit, you know, useless if you use a chopper gunner like that in the first place. But I still think the zombies should still attack you in that state. And so it should be a trade-off if you want to use the chopper gunner or not. And the next up are the perks. Yes, I do praise for the perk for no longer having the whole limited to 4 perks at a time. But it doesn't change the fact that we only have basically a lot of perks that were removed from past titles only return later in the game and call it quote-unquote new perks. Which doesn't make a lot of sense since we already seen these perks before in a while. Sure, the new people who just started to get into the zombie franchise may feel like new to them, but we just kind of seen these ones before and we see how it functions, and we're basically trying to see and always speculate what's going to be the tier upgrades going to be. That's perfectly fine. But the fact that we only had 6 perks at launch is ridiculous. Of course, this is probably due to the factor of having, you know, being rushed to make the game. After all, Treyarch did have to clean up Sledgehammer's mess of it. And the only original perk we have in Cold War is Elemental Pop. Every other perk we have is already a perk that already been exists before. Back from World at War, Black Ops 1, 2, and even 4 with Depth Perception. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing that Tombstone and that Perception makes their return. After all, this is like their second time they make a comeback, which is perfectly fine. If they were appear as launch perks, I'll be okay with that. But the problem with them is Black Ops 2 counterpart. Hell, I even consider Black Ops 2's Tombstone to be even better. After all, you keep your perks when you get your Tombstone, or get your Tombstone stash. You don't have to spend money to get to it. And you can just able to get all the perks like this. Why didn't Cold War do this? After all, isn't it supposed to be a more casual experience compared to a hardcore experience? Plus, there's a high-risk, high-reward factor involved with Tombstone, where if you revive yourself with your shadow form, you should be able to keep all your perks and only lose Tombstone, and you have to buy it again. Where if you try to use the self-revive for quick revive, tier 5, you should only keep your first 3 perks you have. Or first 2 perks if you use quick revive. This would actually make things more interesting. So, I really don't like the fact they just keep removing perks for the sake of bringing them back in and call it new perks. They can definitely improve upon it, very much so. But yeah, that's gotta be about it about all my stuff to talk about the Cold War side of negative stuff. Of course, I actually enjoyed making this video, and I guess I could say one more thing to it as well. I don't like that in order to use the DLC weapons or the post-launch weapons, you had to equip them in your loadout all the time. Yes, they did a mystery box update to add them, but then on Season 4, they didn't even add any weapons to the mystery box that appeared in Season 4, 5, and 6. I also don't like the fact that it took them a bit this long to actually create weapon challenges to earn it in Zombies by Season 3, which is basically half of the game's life cycle. But, hey, better late than never. I also noticed in some of the round-based mode, there's actually lack of traps. In Die Machine and Firebase C, there's kind of barely any traps. And usually Zombies has been known for its traps. So it felt a little bit off they didn't bother to bring a return. And they did add it in Mauer der Toten in Firebase C. But they're pretty weak traps, to be honest, and they don't really kill the zombies that quick. You get like 5 kills, and that's pretty much about it. It's actually pretty damn quite lackluster. But overall, I do think Cold War Zombie is still fun. But it's just that some of these elements really show the quality of the content that we get. And to be honestly, I'd rather have updates with large content, with large stuff added to the game in one big update, as opposed to just one small update all around for like every week or so. I understand there's season and mid-season updates, but honestly, they could at least done a little bit better. After all, we're gonna have one more final weapon we have in Cold War, and then that will be it.
Good night, freak.
So yeah, but thank you for watching everyone. I hope you enjoyed the video. until next time, farewell, and have a wonderful day, everyone.